Funny and embarrassing fact, the first time I played a Rocket Raccoon, I actually played him incorrectly, and I will tell you all about that, as well as make sure you don't make that same mistake as we jump into the full card review and analysis, which is why we are here today. Welcome to the channel. I am Dylan from All You Can Board, and today we're of course taking a look at Rocket Raccoon from Galaxy's Most Wanted, which was just released, and actually, in fact, I was expecting this coming Friday from when this video was released, and I got it early. I was super pumped about that to receive it. If you were watching this, you might have already seen the Groot video because that is already out on the channel. If you haven't, go check that out. I'll link it somewhere above, and it'll also be linked at the end of the video. You can also just find it on our channel. You can check out all my thoughts on Groot, but today we're talking about Rocket Raccoon. So I'm not gonna waste any more time. We're gonna do a full card review and analysis, and I'll give you all my thoughts at the end. Let's jump right in. Okay, so we're gonna kick things off with the Alter Ego, and we'll get right into the mistake that I made the first time I played him. So recovery of 3, hit points are 9, a little bit low, hand size is 6, it's pretty standard. The ability is called Tinkering. Action, choose and discard a tech upgrade you control, draw 2 cards, limit once per round. This is obviously a very powerful effect. It can reliably give you 2 cards every single time you flip to Alter Ego form, and in fact, that's one of the reasons you'll be wanting to flip to Alter Ego form. This comes into play with the mistake that I made. If the tech weapons, the tech cards that you're using with Rocket Raccoon do not have the uses keyword on them, when they run out of counters, they don't in fact go to the discard pile. The first time I played Rocket, it just didn't feel right. There was something I could tell was just not gelling the way that it was intended, and that's when I looked it up, got the clarification, and I realized. So there is I think one of the aggression weapons that he comes with has uses on it that would get discarded when all the counters are gone because it's run out of uses. The rest of his cards do not. They stay in play, which is why you would want to flip to his Alter Ego and use Tinkering to discard them, get yourself 2 cards, get them into your discard, free up some of those spots in your the restricted cards and stuff, and get some use out of them. That is sort of the cycle with Rocket Raccoon, and that's really important to note. So don't make the same mistake I did. Obviously, it's a very powerful effect. That's part of what you'll want to do. You want to use a bunch of his tech cards, flip to Alter Ego, draw a bunch of cards, heal up, move back, and then, you know, do it all over again. So Rocket Raccoon is pretty cool, and the Alter Ego facilitates everything that he wants to do. Moving on to the hero form, this is Rocket Raccoon again. 2 thwart, 1 attack, 1 defense, low all around aside from the 2 thwart. The ability has murdered you. Response, after you deal excess damage to an enemy, draw 1 card. This is also a really powerful effect, and you're going to trigger it very often. Or at least that's what the whole goal of Rocket is, to play it against villains where you're going to trigger it very often. And to do that, you're going to have to be playing against a lot of minions. Dealing excess damage is mostly going to come into play on minions, so you're going to want to use Rocket specifically in situations where you have a bunch of minions in play to take advantage of this. This is not limited to once per turn, so if there's, if you're playing against Ultron and you have ways to do damage from multiple sources, and each one is going to overkill and all those bots, you're going to draw a whole ton of cards and potentially be able to keep snowballing into more things. That's the best case scenario with Rocket. But that being said, even when I played with them against some of the villains that are in the campaign box, even the higher health minions, or the stronger minions that came into play, I might only begin triggering this once, but I was still able to reliably trigger it given all the weapons he has in play and ways to deal damage from multiple sources. Usually I was able to at some point deal excess damage and be able to draw a card. So usually you'll be able to do at least 1 card draw a turn, which getting a free card every single turn is obviously very powerful. It's even more powerful when you can trigger it a couple times. So overall, really, really powerful hero side. The only thing I'll mention is that it is kind of interesting that, they pair him with aggression, and so much of Rocket is based on aggression, but the thwart is his highest number, and as we'll see from his cards, he has other cards to facilitate threat removal. So even though he's an aggression-based hero out of the box, out of the case, I would say that he is also very adept at dealing with threat, and he might pair well with Justice because of that, because you can even add more on top of that, or he'll slot in great with protection and aggression, specifically because he'll be able to do threat removal on top of the other things he's trying to accomplish. So either way, just wanted to throw it out there and mention it. Let's jump into the next one. Continuing the threat removal theme, let's start with I've Got a Plan, which there's 2 copies of these. Hero response, after you make a basic thwart using your thwart, ready Rocket Raccoon. Rocket Raccoon gets +1 thwart while in hero form until the end of the phase. So the idea here is that you want to use his thwart play I've got a plan with it, and now increase the thwart that he can do, and you'll probably thwart again. However, keep in mind that you can actually just use this as a 1-cost ready rocket. So even at that, it's pretty good. You don't, yes, you're going to lose out on the boost to the thwart, but for 1 cost to get with 2 cards in the deck to efficiently ready rocket to be able to do other things, there's possibilities there that opens up if you've been able to boost his, you know, his attack to be able to thwart and then, you know, ready an attack again. There's a whole bunch of possibilities that opens up. So it just the design space is vast in terms of it just not being only restricted to, you know, using the thwart mechanic, but generally that's where you're going to want to spend your time to get the most value out of this. Important to note, it is still the end of the phase. So if you had 2 of these in your hand, for instance, that +1 thwart would apply to the next 2 thwarts you did if you were able to ready him twice, or if you had other cards to ready him. Just something to keep in mind in case that comes into play with other cards. But overall, it's a pretty good card, and it's pretty interesting that like the first cards we see from him are threat removal cards when he comes with aggression cards right out of the gate. It just shows that he has the versatility. He has the ability to also deal with the threat that are on the schemes as well, while also having all his weapons in play to deal a whole bunch of damage and do a bunch of crazy things. So really cool cards, and you'll use them a lot, especially if you're one of the main sources of threat removal. Okay, let's talk about Reload next. There's 2 copies of these. It's a 1-cost event. Hero action, ready each tech upgrade you control. So obviously Rocket is all about his tech cards in play, tech weapons in play, and being able to maximize their effectiveness and use them as much as you possibly can. 1 cost, being able to ready every single one of them is obviously good, or it can be good, but again, it's going to depend how many tech cards you have in play. So if you're hitting 2 or 3 of these every time you use Reload, or when you're using Reload, that's super effective, because if 2 of them deal 2 damage, 1 of them deals 4 damage, and that's 8 damage, now you ready them all and can do another 8 damage, like that's 16 damage a turn, and you facilitated that with a 1-cost card. So obviously very, very powerful when used in those right situations. The only thing I'll mention, and obviously this comes into play with any card in the game, is sometimes the stars aren't going to align. I have had many situations where I've just had tech cards in play that are exhausted, and by that I mean don't have any more counters on them, I should have said, or I just don't have enough in play, and Reload ends up being something I'm balancing. Do I want to ready a single tech card, get a single extra use? Maybe, depends what the ability is. It might be worth it for 1 cost, but then it ends up almost becoming just a resource in my hand if it's not worth it. So very powerful in the right situation. That situation won't always show up, so just be prepared to sometimes use it as a resource. Don't let that make you think the card is weak or useless. You just have to have the right situation to really realize the full potential of Reload. Okay, next up, a card I am 100% going to mispronounce. That is Schadenfreude. Let me know if I got that right or even close, and let me know what it means too, because I didn't look that up. This is my favorite card out of all the hero cards in Rocket, and that might be a surprise, but I just love this card. So 2-cost event, until the end of the turn, heal 2 damage from Rocket Raccoon each time you deal any amount of damage to an enemy. So it costs 2, which means you're using it, so you're using potentially half your hand to basically get this out. But if you have tech cards in play, weapons in play, and other cards in your hand that can do damage and his basic attack, I found that most of the times I use this, I can effectively do damage 3 times, like from 3 different sources, which means that for 2 costs, I'm healing 6 damage off of Rock without having to switch to Alter Ego form, and still doing a whole bunch of stuff. It's not really hindering me too much. The potential to heal 6 or 8 damage while dealing a whole bunch of damage and not have to flip to Alter Ego is so good that literally the only downside I had in this card is that there's only 1 copy. And I know why there's only 1 copy, because the ceiling's so high on it, but if there had been like 2 or 3 copies in this deck, I would have been never switching to Alter Ego form, which would have meant never drawing the 2 cards and discarding my tech cards, but at the same time, healing that much constantly in hero form would have just been so powerful. So I love this card. It's, like I said, it's my personal favorite out of his hero cards, just because of what it allows me to do, and it feels so great to use it and to see the results of it. But yeah, very powerful card all around, even if it's not your favorite, and I think that when you do use it, you'll see just how great it is. Okay, moving on to Salvage. This is a resource card, a brand new one, and it is response. After you spend this card, put a tech upgrade from your discard pile on top of your deck. So the other thing to note is that there are 2 resources you gain from it. You gain a mind resource and a wild resource. So it's effectively 2 extra cards in your deck now, on top of what I'm assuming you have the 3 basic cards that give you 2 resources each. You'll now have 5 cards in your deck to give you 2 resources each, which is obviously a boost. Helps you play some of these more expensive tech cards. The engine you're creating here is basically that you're going to put into play a tech card, you're going to use all the counters off it, you get its full use out of it, then you're going to flip to Alter Ego, discard it, draw 2 cards, then you're going to use Salvage to put it back on top of your deck and rinse and repeat and do that whole thing again. So that's sort of the engine that Salvage allows you to do. You're only going to want to obviously do that with the tech cards that are more powerful, the particle cannon and different things like that you want to get as much mileage out of as you can, because they deal a lot of damage or are very efficient. But overall, I like the Salvage. I like Salvage and I like what it allows Rocket to do. And even when you're not, getting a super valuable tech card on top of your deck, or there's been times I never even put a tech card at all on top of my deck. Sometimes just the 2 resources alone is worth it, having 2 extra cards that allow you to do that. So pretty cool card, and it facilitates basically the entire engine of Rocket Raccoon. Okay, moving on to Battery Pack. This is going to be an interesting one to discuss because on one hand, I see the power level and I've experienced the power level, and it can be very, very useful. On the other hand, sometimes and often, unfortunately, it was just a useless card for me and one I just sort of used as a resource to do other things. So it's a 1-cost upgrade, enters play with 2 charge counters on it. You can use the action to exhaust it and move a charge counter from it to another tech upgrade you control. So the whole point here is you put Battery Pack in play and you're essentially moving batteries to other tech cards that are more powerful and that could use extra counters, like Particle Cannon that only comes into play with 2. You can now put a 3rd and a 4th on it over 2 turns. The other thing to really keep in mind, this is where you get the full power out of Battery Pack, is you use the action twice, move the counters to other cards where you facilitate better actions, and then you switch to Alter Ego and you discard Battery Pack to draw 2 cards. This is pretty much the best target, I would say, in the deck to target with your Alter Ego's ability to draw 2 cards, because it's absolutely useless when it's out. You're probably not going to want to add more counters to it unless it's to store for later. So you discard it for 2 cards and you got the full use out of it. So don't get me wrong, it has that, power level potential, and you'll get a ton of use out of it when the situation allows for it. There's just been so many times that I've drawn it and I've had, the pistols in play or something like that. And yes, I could put this out and I could put extra counters onto Rocket's pistols, but I'd almost always have had other things in my hand that I've been able to say, well, rather than get 1 or 2 counters on Rocket's pistols, I could do this right now and it would be more effective. And I end up having to balance that. It's really only coming to play when Rocket Launcher and Particle Cannon specifically are in play that I'm really incentivized to put Battery Pack out and get the full use out of it and then see the whole engine happen. So yeah, hit or miss, but overall, the power potential on it is enough to facilitate most things. So you're going to want to try to use it. And again, if you have some of those big tech cards in play, this is one of your best friends. Moving on to Cybernetic Skeleton. There's not much to say here. It's just an all-around great card and part of his, base kit. Not super flashy, and what we've come to expect from a lot of heroes, but still very welcome in Rocket specifically. And that's because it's a 2-cost upgrade that gets you +3 hit points, but also while you're in hero form, Rocket Raccoon gets +1 attack. So Rocket has pretty low hit points at 9. This making him have a 12 hit points is a very welcome addition, and something that if you can have in your opening hand is going to really help you through the rest of the game. But it's an extra bonus that it gives you +1 attack, because now he has +2 attack for the entire game after you play this, and you're able to do a whole bunch more things with Rocket, especially if you're, thwarting and then using I have a plan to be able to attack for 2 after that. There's a whole bunch of things that opens up. So not much more else to say. If you get this one in your opening hands, you're going to want to play it, and it's going to give you a boost for the entire game. Okay, and now we can talk about Particle Cannon finally. I've been alluding to it a couple times. This is one of, if not the most powerful tech weapon that Rocket comes with. It is a 3-cost upgrade. It's restricted, which means you can only have 2 restricted cards in play, even if they're different cards. Enters play with 2 charge counters on it. Hero action attack, exhaust Particle Cannon, remove 1 charge counter to deal 4 damage to an enemy, and this attack gains overkill and ranged. So Particle Cannon is great. It only comes with 2 counters because it's so great. The idea here is that you're going to use cards like Battery Pack, like Flora and Fauna, to be able to add more counters onto Particle Cannon to have 4 or 6 turns in a row where you're able to use this. 4 damage with overkill and ranged is really good, especially because it will likely allow you to draw a card through Rocket's hero ability, or it'll chip off enough damage that you can do something else to be able to get that overkill or that excess damage to be able to draw that card. Likewise, the range is really useful in situations where the saddest card's there and is super pesky and annoying. Now you can ignore it, and even without the overkill, just 4 damage reliably off one of your tech cards every single turn is pretty powerful. So the idea here is you get Particle Cannon in play, figure out ways to get more charge counters on it, get the full max use out of it, and if you're lucky, never have it leave play and just constantly, use battery packs to put more stuff back on it as your deck reshuffles. But again, when in a pinch, you can discard it and draw 2 cards with the alter ego form. So yeah, I love this card. I use it a whole bunch. It's one of the ones I'm hoping to draw into to be able to facilitate a lot of the stuff that Rocket is doing, and I think that you'll enjoy playing with it. Next up is Rocket Launcher, and this could be considered the most powerful weapon. It's really a toss-up between this and Particle Cannon. This one's a little bit more situational, but in the right situation, I would say it's more powerful than Particle Cannon. So this is also restricted. It's also a 3-cost upgrade. It enters play with 2 charge counters on it as well. Exhaust Rocket Launcher and remove 1 counter. Choose a player. Deal 2 damage to the villain and to each minion engaged with that player. So this is where the potential comes in. It's only 2 damage compared to Particle Cannon's 4, but if you have 3 minions engaged with you, dealing 6 damage split across those 2, 2, and 2 is great. If you're against Ultron, this is devastating. This is one of the best heroes and cards specifically to use against Ultron. You could have 5 bots in play against you and you literally kill all of them and do 2 damage to Ultron for a single counter, and you still have it in play to do that again on a future turn, and you can keep powering it up with battery packs to continue to do that. Against Ultron specifically, literally put down Rocket Launcher, get those battery packs, get this thing as full on charge counters as you can, and just never have to worry about the bots, or at least you won't have to worry about them nearly as much, put it that way. So yeah, overall, really good card. Up there with Particle Cannon is one of your best 2 tech cards. I think you'll get a lot of use out of it. If you're not playing against a deck that has a lot of minions, loses a bit of its efficiency. It's only 2 damage, but it's still a tech card that you can get some free pings in with, and you might all of a sudden have some minions pop in that you're able to take advantage of it. So, and again, you don't have to choose yourself. You can choose the person you're playing with. You can deal with the minions in their board as well. Overall, a very good card. Okay, next up we have the last of the weapon tech cards and the hero cards for Rocket. This is a 1-cost upgrade called Rocket's Pistols. There's 2 of them. Rocket's Pistol, there's 2 of them. Restricted, enters play with 3 charge counters on it. A hero action is exhaust Rocket's Pistol and remove 1 charge counter. Deal 2 damage to an enemy. Very simple. You're basically going to get 3 uses of this. So for 1 cost, you're doing 6 damage across 3 turns, or potentially less if you're able to ready the card before that. There's 2 of them. You're going to be seeing a lot of them. They're just nice, consistent 2 damage here and there. Nothing overly powerful about them aside from the fact that you can replenish them with charge counters. At the end of the uses, this is a great target for your alter ego ability to draw 2 cards. So you've essentially paid 1 cost, dealt 6 damage, and then drawn 2 cards with discarding it. Overall, great value if you use it that way and it comes across in that full cycle of itself. So yeah, very, very good card. Not nearly as good, obviously, as Particle Cannon and Rocket Launcher. It's not really meant to be. This is the minor version of the tech weapons, but you're still going to see a lot of use of it, and because there's 2, you're going to see it a little more frequently as well, but still great. And like I said, best target out of the weapons, I would say, to discard for 2 cards, because you're not really that upset if you lose it, and you're probably going to want to get rid of it because it's restricted to make room for the Rocket Launcher and Particle Cannon. So overall, pretty cool card. And the last of the hero cards is Thruster Boots. This is another thwart facilitating card, a 1-cost upgrade. While in hero form, Rocket Raccoon gets +1 thwart and gains the aerial trait. I'll say right off the bat, the aerial trait is not that big a deal yet. As more cards get added into the game that use aerial effectively, perhaps this gets revisited and we realize that for 1 cost, doing the thwart and giving you aerial is a big deal because aerial facilitates a lot of other things. For now, I would say you can mostly ignore that. There are some cards you potentially take advantage of that, but I don't think that's the main reason you're using this card. Generally, you're going to want it for the thwart because now Rocket will have 3 thwart, and with this card that allows him to ready again using his thwart, you could do 3 thwart, ready, and then do 4 thwart and have done 7 thwart because of what this card allows. So again, another reason that Rocket is just a great hero that for threat removal, despite the fact that he comes with an aggression set in his deck, makes him a great target to try with Justice as well. You can do some damage with all his weapons in Justice, and then also be very effective at removing threat every single turn, regardless of what's in your hand. But even in aggression, being able to do damage and also remove threat reliably from a single hero makes him great to try and solo, because you can take care of the 2 things you're going to want. You'll just have to manage his low hit points. So overall, pretty cool card, and one that if you get into your hand early, you definitely want to get out. It's part of your kit, and it will facilitate a whole bunch of other things for you. Okay, starting with the aggression cards, we're going to kick things off with an exciting ally. I think a lot of people are going to be excited about this. This is Bug. It is a 2-cost ally with 2 health, 1 thwart, 1 attack. Hero response: after your hero makes a basic attack, heal 1 damage from Bug. So any 2-cost allies that have the ability to heal are going to be exciting for the design space and open up tons of possibilities. Bug has the potential to just really bug the villain. I like that little pun there. It's you know, it's going to be very easy to do your basic attack to heal his damage whenever you want. You're not really limited there, aside from if you really, really need to thwart for some reason. Generally, you're going to be able to pull that off, so you're going to heal him constantly. Obviously, if he takes a single hit, unless it's exactly 1, he's going to die. So he's a chump blocker when you need him, but then he's just gone from that. The idea here is that you can keep him in play as long as you can without having to block by just doing an attack or a thwart every single turn or alternating, and then constantly healing him back up, which is just a pesky 1 or 2, 1 thwart or 1 attack every single turn. The design space is even more interesting when you think that you can boost these stats. So there's cards in the game that you can obviously boost his thwart, boost his attack, boost his health. In that regard, there's way more potential to heal him up more effectively, to do more damage or more threat removal every single turn and have him continue to be pesky and coming back. So really, really cool card that I'm excited to try multiple decks. I've tried him in Rocket a whole bunch, and he lives up to exactly what I just described, but I'm excited to try him in other decks that are built around potentially facilitating him a little bit better. And you know, it's funny, we just did our top 5 aggression allies. I'm kind of curious where he would have slotted in if this had been out long enough for us to explore, but it'll be interesting to see now where he slots some of the other ones as we play around with them a little bit more. Either way, very exciting addition to the game. Moving right along to Looking for Trouble. So I will say this right off the bat, and maybe this was just me being naive, but when I first looked at this card, it completely underwhelmed me. I honestly just, it was one of the cards I flipped through and said, oh, okay, cool, and I moved on to the next one. I didn't really think too much about it, and in execution, in playing through the campaign, I was super impressed by this card. It is a 0-cost event. Hero action, discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you discard a minion. So if there's not many minions, you're going to go through that encounter deck a little bit quicker, which might not be the best. If there are a lot of minions, which in the case of the campaign, many of the decks have minions, I was discarding a minion usually pretty quick in the top, 3 or 4 cards, sometimes the very first card. You put that minion into play engaged with you, but then you get to remove 3 threat from the main scheme. So this is a 0-cost remove 3 threat that has the drawback of putting a minion into play against you. The interesting thing is that Rocket specifically wants minions engaged with him. So if we look at a hero like Rocket, if we look at a hero like Thor, this card is perfect for those decks, and it makes them more powerful and facilitates them because it gets you the minions you want and removes threat from the scheme, which is something aggression is not always focused on. So being able to remove that threat from the main scheme, only the main scheme, not the side schemes, but also have a minion in play that you can then overkill or do excess damage to draw a card, or use any of Thor's conditions to where he wants minions in play, I think is really, really exciting. So overall, I think this is a great addition to the game. I think it's much needed, and it'll facilitate those minion-focused heroes to be able to do what they do best. Overall, really cool card, and one that I definitely did not look at the right way when I first looked at it, but in execution, definitely holds its weight. Next up is Follow Through. I'm going to say it right off the bat. I didn't like this card. So I'm sure I will get a comment saying, you know, here's how you can use it, or here's how it becomes more effective. And I would love to hear from that. So if there's anyone who has figured out a better deck to put this into, or a better situation where this card ends up being more effective, please let me know. But in my experience, it was always pretty much a dead card in my hand. So it's a 2-cost upgrade. When your hero's attack deals any amount of excess damage, increase that amount by 1. Essentially, you can pair this with cards like Into the Fray, with cards with overkill, and you're getting an extra damage on top of that overkill. You're getting an extra threat removal with cards that where you have to. I think it's Into the Fray, where if you do overkill or excess damage, it gets converted into threat removed from a scheme. So yes, it's facilitating that, but generally for 2 costs to add a damage, to add another threat removed, or both, it just never seemed worth it to me. I was constantly trying to figure out where I'm supposed to be using this card, especially in the base deck that comes with Rocket, and there was just never a good spot to use it. Again, I would love to hear if there's somewhere where it's more effective, but I'm talking more effective to the point of being like, this is a solid card. If the best we can do is make it a mediocre card, it still doesn't seem worth it to me. So not an exciting card in my mind, not one that I found much use for. But again, the great thing with this game is that the design space is constantly evolving, and we see cards sometimes that are, just not efficient, not good, become good afterwards when other cards are released to facilitate them. So this could be a card that becomes better down the line. So far, definitely not very impressed. Okay, and the last aggression card is Hand Cannon. So this is an aggression weapon tech, which is pretty cool. 2-cost upgrade, restricted, has 3 charge counters, but it has uses. So when the charge counters are gone, this gets discarded. Hero interrupt, when your hero makes a basic attack, exhaust Hand Cannon and remove 1 charge counter. Your hero gets +2 for that attack. That attack also gains overkill. So obviously, we can see why it's great in Rocket. It allows his base attack to become, 3 or 4, depending if you have his other kit in play, with Overkill, which facilitates drawing cards off Rocket. Very cool. With any hero, the potential to add +2 attack for 3 turns, especially with heroes that want that extra attack to do other things. Very, very good. The Overkill is an extra bonus that, you could do on a minion and then have that spill over to the villain, which is really, really important. Before you start dreaming of using this card in Quicksilver, giving him a gun, reminder that it says +2 attack for that attack only. It's not for the entire phase, so you can't, use this off the bat and then use Quicksilver's attack 4 times and all of them have +2 attack. Unfortunately, that's not going to work, so those dreams are shattered. But overall, it's still a really cool card. I think we'll see this used in a couple different instances and a couple different heroes, especially as we go into the future with the other Guardians. But yeah, doesn't quite live up to the other tech weapons that are in Rocket's deck. I would say that it's not necessarily like an auto include in Rocket, even though that's one of the best instances right now to use it. That being said, it's mostly because it's restricted, and some of the other restricted weapons you're going to want more than this one, but it's still a very useful card, and you're going to definitely find use for it, especially because in Rocket you can draw a card on the Overkill. So cool card, and I'm glad they added it to the game. Kicking off the basic cards, we have Groot, which is a basic ally, 3 cost, 6 health, 1 thwart, and 2 attack, and the 2 attack has 2 consequential damage. So you can only play this if your identity has the Guardian trait. That's important. Response, after Groot defends against an attack, heal 2 damage from him. So again, allies that have the ability to heal reliably are obviously good because they have more longevity and they can do more for you. At 6 health, Groot can take a hit and heal 2 of that damage back pretty consistently, especially against bigger minions. There's a lot of minions out there that will consistently deal 2 or 3 damage. If he can take that 2 or 3 damage from you and then heal 2 back immediately, and then be able to still do stuff for you on your turn if you need, or just stay there as a permanent defender. Like, there's a lot of potential in Groot. He can take a huge villain hit and survive, and then heal 2 of that damage back and still do another attack on your turn. Lots of potential here. I think this is a really solid ally. It facilitates Flora and Fauna as well if you're not playing with both Rocket and Groot. If you're just playing with Rocket and someone else, this facilitates Flora and Fauna on top of that. So overall, super solid ally. It is basic, which means it can slot into any deck. However, the identity has to be Guardian, which right now in Marvel Champions is very limited, which means you're not having a ton of deck building possibilities at this stage. But as the other Guardians are unveiled and we get more cards or more heroes, this will open up, obviously. But for now, you're going to be a little bit limited. So you can't just be like, this is basic, I can slot it into any hero. Not going to work. Either way, very strong ally. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Flora and Fauna because I've already discussed it at length in Groot's video, which you can check out if you want to see the full talk. But all I'll say is that for Rocket specifically, adding 2 charge counters to one of his upgrades and readying it is huge, especially on ones like Particle Cannon and Rocket Launcher. If you've already exhausted them, this is one of your main ways to gain that back. This and the 2 battery packs are your ways to get more use out of those. So it's a very good card. For the full thoughts, check out the Groot video. And finally, the last of the basic cards is Booster Boots. This is a 1-cost upgrade, and it's also a tech card. Play only if your identity has the Guardian trait, max 1 per player. Hero interrupt, when you would take any amount of damage from an attack, exhaust Booster Boots and discard the top card of your deck to prevent 1 of that damage. I found this to be an okay card. It wasn't, it wasn't great, but it also wasn't awful. If you get it out early, mitigating 1 damage consistently every single, villain phase or whatever the case may be, for the rest of the game is good. You're also having to discard a card from the top of your deck. With Rocket specifically, you can get some of those tech cards back, so it's not as big a deal, but it still felt like this card almost could have just been prevent 1 damage, and maybe with a higher cost, and it would have been fine. Overall, I just... because you can only play 1 of them, having 3 in your deck seems like a little bit overkill. They come up more frequently, but then you end up with 2 dead cards in your deck. And it's not necessarily a card you really want to get out at the start of the game. I'd rather play some of the other kit cards over this anyways. So a lot of the times I was just using this to pay for something else, or putting it into play for a little bit and then discarding it to get 2 cards to be able to facilitate a better turn with Rocket. Yeah, there's not much more to say. There might be other uses I'm not catching, and it might get better over time. And don't get me wrong, preventing 1 damage early on from the beginning through the entire game every single turn is great. You're just losing cards off your deck to do that. So yeah, decent card, but just nothing overly special. And sometimes it could end up just being a card you just don't do anything with. Okay, let's talk about the obligation for Rocket, which is Crisis on Halfworld. Give to the Rocket Raccoon player, obviously. You can flip to Alter Ego, all the stuff you'd expect. The second option is the unique one. Discard the highest cost upgrade you control. If no upgrade was discarded this way, this card gains Surge. Discard this obligation. So, the highest cost upgrade is generally going to be Rocket Launcher or Particle Cannon. So discarding one of those really sucks. So you don't want to do that second option. If those aren't in play and you only have, Rocket's Pistol or the Rocket Boots, and that's your highest cost one, discarding it to be able to just discard this and not have to worry about exhausting and getting the free flip to Alter Ego might actually be worth it, and might actually not be that big a deal. It really depends on your situation. Otherwise, it's pretty standard obligation, but if you don't have the really expensive tech cards in play, the second option is really not too bad. Blackjack O'Hare, the Nemesis, 1 scheme, 1 attack, 3 health, quick strike, villainous, and that's it. So villainous, for those who don't know, is that when this minion activates, it essentially activates as a villain, and it gets a boost card. So that means for its scheme or its attack, it will get boost cards just as the villain would. Quick strike, as soon as it comes into play, it's going to attack you. So as soon as it engages you, it's going to attack you. Pretty pesky, pretty annoying, especially because when it engages you, as soon as it comes into play, that attack is going to get the boost cards from villainous. The good thing is that its base scheme and attack are low, so if you get lucky with the boost draws, maybe it's not too bad. And the 3 health is not hard to deal with. That's really the best part about it, is that at 3 health, you can deal with this. Like in Rocket specifically, I can deal with this any turn I want. I rarely have a turn where I can't do 3 damage. So you're going to get rid of him. You're probably just going to have taken the quick strike with the boost on yourself. But other than that, not a whole lot more to note. It's not overly powerful, but if you leave him in play, he's going to really snowball quickly and start dealing you a lot of damage. So great target to do overkill on because of the 3 health, or I should say excess damage on, to be able to draw a card. You'll generally be able to do more than 3. But otherwise, that's all there is to say about Blackjack. Can be annoying, but if you get rid of him, not that big a deal. The side scheme is Vendetta. Not really that, not that powerful a side scheme. As it comes into play with 2 counters per player, which is pretty easy to deal with, and has no ability. The only thing it does is that it has a new icon on it, which is introduced in this expansion, which is every single time a card like this is out with that icon, you have to add 1 boost counter to any cards you flip over looking for boost icons. So yes, you could add another damage, add another scheme to whatever the villain, or to what Blackjack O'Hare, for instance, is doing. If it's hitting multiple targets like that, definitely it's more annoying and does more damage to you. But I would say this is one that, like, if you get into play and you have other things you need to take care of, you're not feeling too awful if you've left this in play for a turn or 2 to do other things. You've taken an extra damage, you've taken an extra scheme. It's not the end of the world. So this is one you can leave out in a pinch, and it's also easy to deal with. So overall, not really that powerful of a side scheme. Okay, 2 copies of Planetary Invasion, which is the Treachery card. When revealed, discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you discard a minion, reveal that minion, and give it a tough status card. So what's interesting here is that Rocket kind of, I wouldn't say he wants minions in play, but he's totally fine if minions engage with him. He's ready to deal with them. He wants to be able to do excess damage to draw cards. It's kind of almost can be a good thing. Really, the thing that sucks here is the tough status card, because you want to do excess damage, you want to overkill, but now you have to deal with this status card before you do your big attack to do that excess damage. That's what makes it annoying. Really, it's going to come down to your deck. If you have ways to deal with tough status cards, or to ignore them completely, and still do the excess damage, you're not going to really care about Planetary Invasion all that much. If you don't, it's going to set you back, especially if it's a powerful minion that comes out. That tough status card could be devastating. If you have a 7 health minion that does a lot of stuff and has a tough status card, it could be a turning point for the game against you. So situational. I would say more often than not, it's okay to deal with, but the potential for it to be awful to deal with is the thing that's scary here. Okay, and finally we have Blackjack's Bazooka. This is his tech weapon, attached to Blackjack O'Hare if you cannot attach to the villain, and the only thing it does is gives the person it's attached to +2 attack. If you want to get rid of it, you have to spend 3 mind resources. So I will say on Blackjack O'Hare, I don't really care all that much about this card. If this ends up on Blackjack O'Hare, I was probably going to be dealing with Blackjack on my turn anyways, so I'm actually not that upset. I just have more incentive to deal with Blackjack, and with him only having 3 health, not that big of a deal. Really, the most annoying thing is if it goes onto the villain. So having +2 attack on the villain, and the only way you can remove it is having to spend 3 mind resources, that sets you back a lot, and +2 attack on the villain over multiple turns, that can really suck. So if it ends up on Blackjack, I don't think you're that upset. If it ends up on the villain, I think you are gonna have to just, you know, take the hit and do the mind resources to get rid of it as soon as possible so that you don't end up taking a whole bunch of extra damage. And that's it for Rocket's cards. So what do I think of Rocket Raccoon? I think that he is more interesting than Groot, but I still personally felt like I had more fun playing Groot. That being said, it really depends on your playstyle. I think that I can see the potential for Rocket to be a much more fun hero than Groot. Groot is a little bit more, I don't want to say basic or simple, like it is a new mechanic with the growth counters and how he functions, but it is similar to other things we've seen. It's not like vastly more unique. I think Rocket's system and his engine of putting weapons into play, spending them and using all the ammo and then discarding them, drawing cards, putting new weapons into play, I think thematically it makes so much sense, and it's super cool to see it go through that motion. So I think that's really cool. I just personally resonated a little bit more with Groot. That being said, Rocket is tons of fun. You really have to make use of getting all those strong weapons into play, getting extra counters on them, using it, discarding the weaker weapons like the pistols or the batteries after they're done to draw more cards to facilitate these huge turns. I think the fact that Rocket has so much thwart potential makes him super versatile. The fact that I can play with him solo, do reliable damage, do reliable thwarting, and the only thing I'm worried about in that case is my health, but even then, he can increase his health by 3 with a card to go up to 12. I think that Rocket has a lot of versatility as a solo hero. I'm really interested to try him out against some of the past villains too, on true solo, and see how much mileage he has there. And I also just think that in any game he slots in very well with multiplayer because of that versatility and because of all the things he can do. So I really had a lot of fun with Rocket. I'm really impressed with both of these heroes. I was thinking that with us being introduced to 2 brand new heroes off the bat with this box, there was a chance for one of them to be a bit of a dud. I don't think either one's a dud. I think that you're gonna have a preference based on Rocket or Groot based on how you play Marvel Champions and what you have the most fun out of, obviously. But I think that they both offer a ton of cool new things, and Rocket specifically is just so much fun to see the execution take place and go through all these weapons and all your ammo and then just chuck them and put new ones into play as if he's tinkering and building new ones. Very, very cool. I have tried Rocket with Justice. I switched for one of the scenarios in here to Justice. He played pretty well in Justice. Obviously, you're just a threat removal king at that point, being able to not only remove with his base thwart and everything, but all the cards that get added in from Justice. And on top of that, you're still doing reliable damage with his weapons. He does obviously work very well with aggression. That's why he comes with aggression. Interested to try him with protection as well. I don't know how you would do with leadership. It's hard to say. I don't play leadership. I play leadership the least of all the aspects, so that's the one that I always am the least knowledgeable of, I would say, which heroes it slots in best. But that being said, Justice and aggression are two very cozy homes for Rocket Raccoon. Those are all my thoughts on Rocket. Let me know which of Groot and Rocket resonated with you more. Let me know how you're playing Rocket. Let me know if there's any cards that I explained here or reviewed here that you see differently. Whether you like them or don't like them or have different uses I didn't mention. I'd love to hear from you. I love discussing all this stuff in the comments. One of the most gratifying things about making these videos is being able to talk with all you guys in the comments. I really, really enjoy that part. So please don't hesitate. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't checked out Groot's video, check him out, see all my thoughts on that, and keep an eye out for the Galaxy's Most Wanted full review and breakdown of the entire box, all the villains, all the new mechanics and things that are added in. We're gonna go over all that in a video coming up in the future, and if you're subscribed, you'll obviously get notified when that video drops. So otherwise, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.